Today we are taking a look at one of the most mysterious and one of the more dangerous members of the G.I. Joe team with the G.I. Joe Classified Series Deluxe Snake Eyes and comparing him to his vintage self from 1985. Hey everyone, welcome back to Toy Habits, and today we are taking a detailed look at the G.I. Joe Classified Series Deluxe Snake Eyes, including his box art, weapons and accessories, and my favorite part, comparing him to his vintage figure from 1985. And before we get to all that, let's first, as always, take a look at the box art. Alright, this bad boy did not fit in the light box, so I took it out just to show you the gorgeous artwork that's on the slip cover. And if I move from top to bottom, you can see actually what this looks like in real life. It's a very dark print. It's a very dark blue on a black print. So you're not really going to see a ton of detail unless I bump up the exposure. So let me do that really quick. Alright, now this is not what the color of this box looks like in real life. I did bump the exposure up a little bit so you can just see the art detail on the front of the box a heck of a lot better than in the last shot. So it's got a really cool scene and it mimics the print that you will find inside the box. So can't wait to check that out. Alright, with the slipcover off, you get to see the same art detail that was on the slipcover, but on this box is a raised piece of art. So it's not a flat piece and it's really bumpy and it feels really nice. You get this lettering off to the side, and I'm gonna light this up really quick just so you can see the detail of the art here. And it looks amazing, and the box is really nice for what you get. And here's that piece of art that I was referring to. So when you open the box, you get treated to this beautiful piece of art. It's the same art that's on the slipcover and on the box, but it's something that you can actually display in your home. So I think they did a really amazing job, and this is something that I would actually hang up in my room and display with my G.I. Joe figures. And we finally get to see what's on the inside of the box, and seriously, opening this box is like peeling an onion. It just comes off in layers and layers and layers, and you finally get to the good stuff here. We have a beautiful display of the weapons that it comes with, the weapon stand, and of course the beautiful packaging that Snake Eyes comes in. Alright, now that Snake Eyes is actually out of the box, we can take a look at the box that Snake Eyes comes in. I know that's weird, but just work with me here. Alright, so taking a look at the art on the front, it has a image of Snake Eyes, and I love the really cool texture that they've put on Snake Eyes here. It's a very iconic look for him with his face shield, and a lot of the texturing detail and images bleed over to the side, which I love about these boxes. And even Timber makes a cameo in this particular box art, and I love that he is holding his sword and that actually bleeds over to the front of the box. I love that effect. And then you get an action shot up here where Snake Eyes is using his Uzi and he's gunning for something. And on the back of the box, you see the standard G.I. Joe Classified Series poster back here, but I love what they did with blacking out everything and just making it in black and white. And I love this cutout that they've included here, which shows the dark blue and black art that is all over this box. Alright, and turning this around to the side of the box, we have the Japanese writing here, and you do see 00 designated for Snake Eyes' number in this collection, so he really doesn't have a true number in the series. Alright, and looking at the top of the box, we have his Ashrakage symbol here, and just a mental note, the oils from your skin will transfer onto this packaging, so be really careful with this packaging because it really soaks up the oils from your skin. And just getting Snake Eyes out of the box, he just looks so damn cool that he deserved a spin-a-rooney on the Lazy Susan, and through the magic of editing, we will put all of the weapons on the weapons rack to show you right now. And voila, we have all of the weapons on the weapons rack, and the figure and the weapons rack and all of the accessories look absolutely amazing, so I can't wait to dig in and show you all of the things that this figure comes with. All right, now looking at Snake Eyes' head sculpt, it's a pretty basic head sculpt, and they've used some finishes here along the top and along the side and on his face shield to just differentiate some of the parts from each other and to make it look a little more interesting. And it looks like he also has a shield that goes over his mouth, which the Snake Eyes that I'm used to from the 80s used to have lips right here. So it looks like they've updated his head sculpt a little bit and made it a little bit more angular right down the jawbone there. And if the side of his head can catch the light a little bit, you can see more of the glossy finish on the side of his head, and it's more of a matte finish on the top of his head. And looking at the neck sculpt, they did give him some neck detail with some sculpting down there. And if we turn him around, I think the Snake Eyes suffers from what a few other of the figures suffer from. There's that notch right here where the ball joint connects to the neck. So I wish they would find a way to cover that up, but this is what we have. And moving down to his torso, we get to see what his vest and his bandolier look like up close. And his vest and bandolier are made of more of a dark greenish color. It almost looks more like a dark mud. So that's what I'm going to call it. It's got a nice Ashrakage symbol right in the middle there, and they did add some silver detail to the buckle. And like all of the other vests and bandoliers, they have some really cool strap detail, and they really have some cool texturing going on just to differentiate all the pieces together. And the bandoliers in his vest that he has are all removable, but I don't know how to get them off, but they are squishy pieces that you can manipulate. And if you know how to get them off, great, but I'm not going to try. And taking a look at the vest and bandolier from the back, they do add some riveting detail here, and these holes are for the backpack to line up so the backpack can fit snugly on his back and hopefully not pop off. As you can see, there's texturing here, and there's also just some sculpting detail that they've added here, and it's a pretty basic upper torso, and I think it looks really nice with that mud color. It actually makes Snake Eyes look a little bit more interesting instead of just a plain black figure. And finally, just getting a closer look at those grenades that are strapped to his bandolier. They actually look really realistic, and I love the little carving detail that they have for them, and they even included little pins, and they could have put some silver touches on there, but I think it's good the way it is. And then moving to his arms are pretty basic. He has some forearm armor here with some touches of brown on the straps and on his gloves. And he also has this kind of mud green gray pouch on the side. And it looks like both of his arms are pretty much the same. So you'll get some nice symmetry going on in this figure. All right, moving down to his belt, you can see that Ashrakage symbol right smack dab in the middle of the bottom belt there, and in the top belt there's some nice touches of silver on the belt buckles, and it's a pretty basic belt, and you can see the netting detail that they've given it around the entire length of the belt. Now, taking a look at the two holsters that are on his legs, the straps are made of that mud color again, and the sheath and the holsters are black, and they did add some nice silver detail there in the buckle. And moving him around to see the gun holster, I do like that they put a spot for his silencer, because I'm sure that's a piece that is gonna get lost, and I do like the carving detail on the holster here, as well as the sheath. You can see some little indentation here, so they kind of gave it a little bit of definition, although it is just a rectangular kind of blocky piece that angles at the bottom. All right, moving down to the pants. Now his pants are that mud color again, and they gave him some dark gray knee pads, and I can't tell if this is a different color than this if the light is catching, but I think it looks like they added some paint detail down below his left knee here, which I'm not really sure why they did that, but it makes it look a little bit more interesting on his leg, and it just differentiates his left leg from his right leg, but it's very hard to see, so I'm not even sure if anyone else will notice, but it's there. And finally, moving down to the boots. Now, he has really basic boots, and they actually look like loafers at the bottom, but I love the way that these boots were sculpted, because you can see some of the detail here. Now, if you actually had your foot in the boot, it would bend and flex a little bit, and I do love the brown detail that they have around there where his pants feed into his boots. Now, Snake Eyes comes with a ton of accessories, so let's take a look at them by starting off with his extra hands. And he does have a hand that has a throwing star in it that looks really cool, and it's made of the same deco as his normal hands that have that brown detail on the knuckles. And he does come with a chopping hand here, and it does have a weapon that's concealed underneath his palm. You can see some netting detail around his knuckles, which should cover that brown deco on his knuckles. And moving on to his guns, let's take a look at the smaller pistol first. And the smaller pistol is really cool. It's got some sculpting detail that looks like there is a clip that can pop out of the bottom, and it does have a longer nose on the gun so that silencer can fit in, which we'll show you in a second. And next up we have his Uzi submachine gun, and this reminds me of the Uzi that came with his figure from 1985, and the detail on this is really cool. You can see some mechanisms on the handle there, and you can see that this also has a longer nose for that silencer. And I really love the way that these guns are constructed and sculpted and molded, because they just look really realistic, and they try to pack a lot of detail in every single gun that they make. All right, next up is the silencer, and this is a pretty basic piece. It's colored in that mud color that his vest is in and some of his other deco like his pouches, but it plugs in really easily to the guns, and it just pops on to the front, and there you have a nice gun with a silencer. And I wish it was black, but I mean, it doesn't look horrible, but it would have been better if this was black. All right, next up is his small knife that goes in his sheath, and I love the handle detail here with the riveting detail, and I just think it's a nice looking knife. It's a nice piece with some jagged edges to give it some interesting definition, and they did add some sculpting detail on the blade itself. So it's a very nice piece, and I'm probably going to keep it holstered most of the time, but there it is. All right, moving on to his sword, and his sword definitely reminds me of his sword from 1985, and I love the sculpting detail on the handle here, and they just made this look a lot more interesting than just a plain sword. And if you look really closely, let's see if I can get this in the light. I think that is the Ashrakage symbol on his sword, if I am not mistaken. And let's see if it is on the other side. Yes. I mean, it could be sculpting detail, but it looks a lot like that symbol. And just two more to go. We have his sheath, and his sheath is also colored in that mud color with some texturing on it. It looks like a leather sheath, and it does have that Ashrakage symbol on it, and it's a pretty cool piece. It's got a long plug for it to plug into the backpack, which we will show you in a minute. All right, and last but not least, we have his backpack, and his backpack was colored again in that mud color. It's a pretty basic backpack with some silver buckle detail here, and it does have a port for his sheath for his long sword. And while we're on that topic, let's show you how that plugs in, and his sheath just plugs into the side here, and his sword goes right in there for a very cool looking backpack when it's all put together. And here is Snake Eyes all geared up, and this figure definitely looks amazing with all of the accessories that he has. So he can hold his submachine gun, he's got his knife in his hand, he's not ready to use his sword yet, but he does have his silencer and his gun in his holster. So he is definitely on the ready and ready to make a move. All right, so let's take a closer look at the weapons rack, and what I'm going to do is just run down the list of weapons first, because they were very tedious to put on, and any single bump or nudge would kind of make them fall like dominoes. So here we go. And first up, we have a pair of sais, followed by a nagamaki, followed up by a pair of axes, and then we have the longest weapon in the set, which is a yari, followed by a pair of kama, and finally the ninjato sword at the bottom. So let's take a closer look at each of them here. All right, first let's take a closer look at the sais, and I'm going to be very careful here, hopefully not to bump anything, but the sais are pretty basic, and they have some handle detail on them. And what I'm going to do is not put them back on the weapons rack, because I'm afraid I'm going to have a calamity on my hands here. And next up is the nagamaki sword, and if I can take this out, this weapon has been used for the last 1,000 years, and is basically a half sword and half handle type of weapon, and it's got some sculpting detail on the handle, which is pretty cool. All right, we have the axes next, and these things are very finicky to put on, and luckily I got them off safely. And the axes are pretty cool. They have some notching detail out of them, which I think can make them lighter because you don't want to be carrying around a huge hunk of metal, and they have some sculpting detail on the handle here. All right, followed up by the longest blade in the set, which is the Yari. So this is a long double-bladed sword, and it looks pretty cool, and it looks like it could do a lot of damage to not only one person, but probably multiple people at the same time. And next up we have a pair of kama, and just like the axes, these are very finicky to take off, and I feel like I'm playing the game Operation, and I don't want to get that buzzer, but these are a pair of kama, and they're different than the ones that are packed with the Arctic Mission Storm Shadow. So let's take a closer look at those. And they do have some sculpting detail at the top if you look very closely, and they have similar handle detail to the other types of weapons in here. And finally, we are down to the Ninjato sword. And whoo, all right, we did not have a calamity on our hands, which is great. This is a slim straight sword, and it's a cool modern twist on an ancient weapon. It looks pretty basic. There is some notching detail here and some handle detail that you'll see on some of the other weapons as well. So I'm just going to let this go spin-a-rooney on the Lazy Susan for a bit just so you can see what the cool details are on this weapons rack. And so we have this really cool scene on the front, and on the back we have a place where his weapons can get stored, and we also have these cool, very fierce looking dogs with their mouths open and their teeth grinding, ready for some action. And I just think it's a cool piece, and I love that it came with this set, and you really don't see sets like this coming from Hasbro and all of these weapons, so I'm really excited about it. And now that the weapons are off of it, we can see what it looks like without them. And there is some Japanese writing here, and obviously you can see the hook detail and also the dogs. And let me see if I can get a close-up shot of the dogs. The sculpt on the dogs looks really cool, and they look like they are barking, and they're very ferocious dogs. And on the other side, we are treated to this very cool scene here. And if you look from a side view, it's actually printed plastic on here, and it's super bumpy and it's super textured, and I just love the way this looks. But I think I'll be displaying the weapons turned around because the weapons rack looks really cool with all the weapons on it. Alright, now let's compare the Deluxe Snake Eyes to the vintage Snake Eyes from 1985, and they did a great job just recreating the vintage figure from 1985, and there are so many similarities that they drew upon to create this deluxe figure. So for example, the face shields are similar aside from the paint decos, and there are small variations in the face mask where you can see his lips, and the bandoliers are pretty much exactly the same. Also, the belt detail is pretty much exactly the same, and they have his gun and his knife on the side there, which are present in the classified figure as well. So I just think they did a fantastic job just paying homage to the vintage Snake Eyes from 1985. And turning them both to the side, they even added patches on the biceps here, which are also present in the figure from 1985. And if we take the sword out from his sheath and the sword from his backpack, we can see just how similar these two swords are. And obviously the classified version of the Snake Eyes sword is a bit longer, but they're definitely a very similar shape and a very similar style again, and they have a great nod to the Snake Eyes from 1985 here. With all of the figure details, accessories, box art, and weapons rack, they really jammed a ton of nostalgia as well as given a more updated look and feel to this figure. So let us know what you think about this figure in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get alerted to new reviews and episodes we post. Thank you so much for tuning into Toy Habits, and be safe out there.